Welcome back to the Merrie Monarch Festival, live from Hilo, Hawaii. It's always a tradition, it's always great, and we thank you for tuning in. I'm Kimo Kahuano with
Paula Akana.
Yes.
You know, an important part that we see as the dancers take the stage is we look at their lei. And so much beautiful and hard work goes into designing the adornments that the dancers wear on the stage. The lei is very, very important. And we had a chance to sit down and talk with our guest co-host this year, Pua Kanakaʻole Kanahele, about the significance of the lei as it applies specifically to hula. Let's take a listen.
You know, we very seldom talk about hula dancers and their leis. I think that making leis and the wearing of the lei is an important aspect of the meaning of the dance. We have many different kinds of leis that we make, some from the lower part of the land, which is towards the Kakai, and we like to pick up lauae from the Kakai. And then as we go farther up the mountain, those kinds of leis become more meaningful as far as deities are concerned. And so the farthest up the mountain we go, we pick mamane, and we pick liko, and we pick the lehua. We also use a'ali'i. Those are the more popular leis that we use. Palapalai, a lot of ferns, palapalai, pala'a. All of these vegetation have different significance to them. We use a lot of liko on our island, and usually you want to pick vegetation that's popular in your area so that you're not running all over the island and picking vegetation all over the different parts of the island. What it forces you to do is to take care of that patch of lauae, to take care of the patch of liko and or hala or whatever you're using for your dress, but more especially for leis, that you're always conscious about vegetation in your area. And if you make your own leis, more you're going to be conscious of what you pick and where you pick and how much you pick. If you don't make your own leis, you don't take that responsibility of where the vegetation is coming from. Okay. Leis are not something that we invented a short while ago. Leis are things that we always wore, and we wore it for decoration, we wore it for many purposes. But when it comes to dancing, lei is ceremonial, and so it's not just an adornment. And it's ceremonial because you pick certain kinds of vegetation to go with certain kinds of dances. Okay. So if you're doing dances of pele, and you would use liko, or you would use lehua, or you use a'ali'i, all of those kinds of vegetation that comes from the upland. You can also use mamane for that very, very yellow, nice lei. Okay, so, and then if you're doing dances for other deities, you do other kinds of dances. But laka and pele and hi'iaka all have the same kind of vegetation. Hi'iaka usually use a lot of ferns. And the whole idea of ferns and hi'iaka is that in hi'iaka's role with Pele, that dualistic role that they play, is that she's the healer of the island. So she goes out after there has been an eruption, she goes out and she sows seeds. Vegetation will begin to grow right away, but that's healing the land. In this way, hi'iaka is related to a lot of fern type plants, because this is the first thing that's carried off in the wind and begins to take hold. And so she's related to the ferns. When you wear these vegetation on you, it's for the same reason that you keep a kuahu in your halau. And many people don't keep kuahus anymore for many reasons. And but we still keep a kuahu in our halau. But the idea of keeping a kuahu is that you're bringing all the vegetation from the mountain down to the halau. And so you have a little bit of the forest in the halau. So therefore you have the manifestations of the deities, their kinolau, in your halau. And so you still are exposed to that. And they use certain kinds of vegetation because of the name of the vegetation sometimes. For instance, olapa is a basic name that has to do with the dancers. And we used to be called olapas when we were little kids and growing up. For a long time in my grown up years, I didn't hear that word. And because now we say hula awana when we used to say hula olapa. But olapa is the name of a tree that's up in the upper forest. The leaves are light green. When the wind blows through the tree, the leaves dance like this. For that reason, we like to call the dancer olapa because it's very pliable, it moves very gracefully. And very much like palapalai, the word palapalai, palapala means palai means to be very supple and your body moves very easily. And so you wear some of these vegetations because you take on the characteristic of that particular vegetation, the name of the vegetation. But as I said earlier, the vegetation all belong to the manifestations of these different deities. And like the kuahu that I explained is when you take the lei and you make a lei and you cover your hands, you make a lei kupe'e, you make a lei kupe'e for the feet as well, and for the ai and for the po'o, a lei po'o. What you're doing is you're covering your whole body, your extremities, your head, etc. And it's like a kuahu. You are the kuahu of that particular deity or those deities from which you get these vegetation. So when a dancer wears all of these, she becomes that kuahu. She becomes that deity. So she's taking on the characteristics, not only of the name of the different vegetation, but also the characteristic of that particular deity. This is something we don't, a lot of us as Kumuhula don't tell our students. And because we've treated lei as adornment for so long that we continue to do that. Leis are, especially for a dancer, is part of the ceremony of the dancer. It's the ceremony of the kuahu. The whole idea of wearing the leis that belongs to certain deity is that you become that deity. And so you have to act in a certain way. And after you dance with the leis, after you've gone to the mountain, pick the leis, clean them out and put them into a lei and put them on you and you become that deity. After you're done with the lei, you take it off and you put it back somewhere in the mountains. Or if you have your own garden, you put it back in your garden. So one of the things we don't do and we don't encourage people to do is just run around with the leis on that you've been dancing with. Because it's not adornment. After you dance with it, it's not adornment. And so it needs to be deposited, put away, and given a mahalo that you've had the chance to become at that particular time to become the god and to dance.
And joining us now is Pua Kanakaʻole Kanahele. And Pua, that was so interesting.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here this evening. Hula is very important to us. It's very important to us as a family because it's our life. And hula is a way of expressing about this place where we live. Talk about the ocean, it talks about the valleys, it talks about the mountains, and it reminds us who we are and the fact that we belong to this land. And so it's very important to be able to talk about these things every once in a while, and especially at a time like this at Monarch when everybody that's most interested in hula are here at this time, and this is a wonderful time to be able to share with them about the spirituality of this land.
I think that is a perfect moment because there's so many people out there who this may be the only time when they actually get to see the hula and learn so much about it. So to see more than just the dance itself.
And this is probably the only time that they get to connect to the land, because many of them come here and they go to the volcano and give an offering, or they go to the ocean and give an offering. If they're dancing about somewhere on this island, they go there. And this is really the only time they have to do that. And for many others who have things like lehua in their mele, this is probably the only time they get to see the lehua that's growing on a tree. So it's an important time for all of us, as well as the lehua.
It's Kahiko night, the ancient dance, and to tell us more what that's all about, we have Pualani.
Yeah, well, it's a tough job for the judges, obviously, and there's specific things they look for.
Oh yeah, I would like to share with the audience what the judges are looking at when they're judging. They first look at ka'i. And the ka'i is the dance that the dancers do as they're coming onto stage. It represents a new dawn. It represents the rising of the sun, this newness. And then the ho'i they judge on. The ho'i is when the dancers leave the stage. And so there's two different chants for coming on and going off. Coming on is ho'opukekala, makahikina, you're coming from the east. Going off is ho'i ho'i ika ohu, going back into the mist. And all of this is part of the whole performance, because you have to start and you have to begin. And then they look for expression. Expression has to do with whether the dancers understand the mele that they're doing. And it'll show in their face, or it will not show in their face. And so the judges will pick up on that. They look at posture, because the dancers have to have a certain posture, and when they're doing whether they're doing hula noho or hula hele, they have to have a certain posture between their shoulders and their hips. They look for precision at the whole group, whether the hands are going the same direction, whether they're doing the same foot movements, and so the judges have to scan through all of the dancers to see this. They also look at hand gestures, and hand gestures are whether the dancers are doing the same hand gestures, whether the hands are going up together in the mountain, whether the hands are going down into the ocean. They also look at the foot movement, and the foot movement is very important because the foot movement keeps the tempo of the dance, whether it is kaholo or whether it is wehe. It's what keeps you to the earth, but the earth gives you that rhythm or that tempo. And they look at interpretation. Now, interpretation has to do with the kumuhula and how she looks at the mele and how she brings out her hand movement within the mele, as well as the expression on the face about this particular mele. And so sometimes the hand movement isn't as literal as, say, flower or pua. Sometimes it's more abstract. So the judges need to understand that. The ho'i, we talked about the ho'i. The authenticity has to do with the overall thing. It has to do with the lole that they're wearing. It has to do with the leis. It has to do with the kupe'es. It has to do with the judges are looking at, the implements they're doing, whether it comes from a particular time. In the hula kahiko, it has to be come before 1893. In the adornments, they're looking at what kind of adornments you have, whether it goes with the hula, or are they adornments of the land? They would like to see adornments of the land, such as lawa'e, such as maile, as mokihana, those kinds of plants that are from this particular land, indigenous or endemic to this land. They like to look at the overall group and see what the grooming of the overall group looks like, whether their hair is all in place, whether their lole is the same, or whether something is just a mist, or whether their leis are a little bit dry. Okay, all of this counts. the overall is that they're looking at the dancers, they're looking at the chanters, they're listening to the rhythm, they're looking at the vavai or the foot movement, they're looking at the lima or the hand movement, they're looking at the face.
And it is a living art. It's a living performance that is never really done again, only on this stage one night, and that's tonight.
That's it. It's a living art, and it's something that we see at this time, and then it's